All right. Good luck, everyone.
So I have this big screen in front of me that says, got it or leave meeting. I just say, got it?
Yes.
Yeah, don't leave.
All right, we're good. Okay, welcome to the Windham Uncensored State Representative Debate. And a special thanks to Tom Early for organizing this debate and for providing the technical expertise to make it possible. This debate will be moderated by Kathy Robertson Suter and myself, Roger Hohenberger. Each candidate will have a brief introduction explaining the main reasons for running with a maximum time of 1 minute. It is our hope that this exchange of your ideas and opinions will provide the public with the knowledge to make an educated decision on who can best represent the residents of Windham in the Rockingham District 17 race and the combined residents of Windham and Londonderry in the Rockingham District 35 race. There are 10 candidates vying for the 4 seats in District 17 and 2 candidates competing for the single seat in the District 35 race. This debate has the unique advantage of following on the heels of a very educational exchange last week with the Women's Club debate. The advantage is that all candidates have had an opportunity to examine their fellow candidates' stance on many of the questions that the residents of Windham are asking. In addition, the candidates have had an opportunity to fine-tune their own position on many of these critical topics as well. The questions asked tonight are a compilation of the questions raised by many subscribers to Windham Uncensored and will parallel many of the topics covered in last week's debate. Kathy and I will alternate asking the questions. The structure of this debate will be such that each candidate will be given the allotted time for each question, either 1 minute or 30 seconds, depending on the question asked. The timekeeper will notify the speaker when 10 seconds are remaining. The candidate must answer the question, if only in a cursory manner. The candidate may then use the remainder of their time to elaborate on a previous question or even rebut a comment made if desired. In addition, each candidate will be presented with 3 chits. These chits will allow the candidate 30 seconds to respond immediately following the candidate that is presently speaking. These chits are not transferable between candidates. The moderators will be notified by a voiced raise hand or I would like to speak in the event a candidate would like to use one of their chits. The chits may also be used to expand the time allotted for a question being answered by the 30 seconds. It is desired these exchanges will remain respectful and courteous, and personal attacks will not be tolerated and will be terminated by the moderator. And with that, let us begin. So Matt Rounds, you're the first one. You have 1 minute to explain what is driving you to run for this position.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Roger. So my name is Matt Rounds, and I grew up in Mount Vernon, New Hampshire, and I've been a resident of Windham for about 10 years now, a member of the planning board, and I was formerly the president and CEO of Standard Power of America, which I also founded. I'm running specifically as an independent because I believe that the 2-party system has been a detriment not only to our state, but also to our country. And I'm also running as an independent because I want to be able to represent Windham and have my loyalty not be divided from any other source. I'm also self-funding because I believe that I do not want to have my election be beholden to any other party or outside group. I believe that as an independent, I will be able to help bridge the divides that currently divide our state between the 2 parties and try and bring it back to the people. Thank you.
Alan?
Thank you, Roger, and thanks, Windham Uncensored. So really, I'm going to answer 2 questions. One is, why am I running? And the one I most often get asked is, well, why did I choose to run as an independent? Well, I'm running because candidly, it became very obvious to me early this year that we are not being properly represented in Concord. And no offense to the current slate of state representatives that drive there once in a while to represent us in the state legislature, but the actions and the votes and the attendance and on and on and on, it just became aware to me that we're Windham and we can absolutely do better. And rather than just sit on my couch and complain about it, I decided I'm going to get up and do something. So I decided I'm absolutely going to run. But I've been a registered independent for most of my time here in the community. So I had to then say, well, how do I do this? And I went to approach the Republican Party. And frankly, I wasn't in the part of the inner circle. I wasn't welcomed. And in fact, I was pretty much excluded from the club. And I'm sorry,
5 seconds.
Time's up, Alan.
5 seconds. Okay, so I'm running as independent. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Caitlin?
Thank you to Tom Early and to moderator Hohenberger for hosting us here tonight. And thank you all who are watching. Many of you already know me from my work volunteering in the community, but for those of you who don't, I'm Caitlin Kutab. I live here in Windham with my husband, Johnny, and our 4 children. Professionally, I'm a former engineering manager in the software industry. And I'm running for state representative because I care deeply about the well-being of my neighbors and our children. It has been heartbreaking to hear the families who are having to choose between heating and eating. And I will work to support legislation that keeps energy prices down so that it's affordable for residents. Another important issue is the academic struggles that our children are facing in school. 1 in 3 children in New Hampshire cannot read at grade level. Our kids deserve better, and it doesn't have to cost more. Windham families deserve a fresh voice who will listen to our community and fight to do what is necessary for them. As you watch here tonight and get to know me more, I hope you'll find the confidence in my ability to represent you and that I'll have the honor of earning your vote next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Bob?
Hi, thanks to Windham Uncensored for holding this. My name is Bob Lynn. I've lived in town since 1996. But as I mentioned last week, a lot of you probably didn't know me until a couple of years ago because as a judge, I really had to keep a very low profile, which I did. I retired in 2019 when I turned age 70 because that's what the Constitution requires for judges. But I believe that I still had something to contribute. And although I was unable to be involved at all in politics for all the time I was a judge, I always had an interest in politics and government, and I felt I had something to contribute as a state representative. I'm very proud of the service that I rendered for the state and for Windham during the 1 term I've served, and I would like the opportunity to serve you again. I will tell you that I think I hold traditional Republican values. I believe in small government, low taxes, meeting minimum requirements for service for government to provide sort of the safety net, so to speak. I believe that we should have a business-friendly and family-friendly state, and I think the Republican Party delivered that the last time. And and I would hope if you send me back to Congress, to deliver that same service again. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bob. Katie?
Hi, thank you, Roger. My name is Katie Galing, and for those who don't know, I'm the one running in District 35, which represents both Windham and Londonderry. I grew up in Londonderry and spent most of my life there. When I first became interested in politics, I got involved in Barack Obama's campaign, and even though I lived in Londonderry at the time, I actually spent most of my time working for his campaign here in Windham and a little bit in Salem as well. And I really appreciated the opportunity to get to know Windham a bit better than I might otherwise have done. And, just to let everybody know, because I know this is a Windham debate, it is very important to me to hear the constituents who come from Windham. And so if anybody is concerned about voting for somebody from Londonderry, I encourage them to reach out to me and chat with me about it. And as for why I'm running, I believe that there's too much extremism in politics today, and I'm getting into it because I think the more people who get into it who are not quite that extreme and are willing to work together and make things better, the better off we'll be.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Christy, you're on mute. Tom, Christy's on mute. Can you?
Oh, I think he did it. Okay. Yeah, I muted to cough and then I couldn't unmute. So, all right. So my name is Christy St. Laurent, and I've lived in Windham for 23 years with my husband, Rob. We have 3 kids. They were all raised in the school system here. My youngest is just finishing up at Windham High School right now. I'm a physical therapist by training. I have over 30 years in the field, and I'm a problem solver by nature. My friends and supporters familiar with my service recognize that I'm a person of action and results. I started service in the town as being an alternate on the planning board, and then I was elected to 3 terms. I'm currently chair of the Economic Development Committee, which serves to advise our elected and appointed boards and the business community. I was appointed by the Board of Selectmen to the Windham Housing Authority, which I've gotten reactivated to try to bring affordable housing for seniors to Windham. I was appointed by the governor to the State Commission on Aging and chair the task force to support older adults to age in their community of choice. And I've proven that I can work with people with a variety of opinions and perspectives to build consensus and to get results. So I want to take that approach to Concord.
Thank you, Christy. Val?
Hi, I'm Val Roman. I grew up in Somersworth, New Hampshire, and have lived here in Windham for 36 years. My husband, Tony, and I have 2 married sons and finally 1 grandson. I'm retired from a long career in technology management, where I worked at the Census Bureau in Washington, D.C., and then as technology director, the city's first technology director for Cambridge, Massachusetts, and for Phillips Academy in Andover. I'm running because, like many of us here, I'm tired of the divisiveness that's going on in politics. I'm tired of watching what's going on in Concord, where a national ideology is being pushed more than the needs of Windham residents and New Hampshire residents. And I'm tired of a loyalty to some group being more important than solving real problems. So that's why I'm running, and I hope to be able for people to get to know me more. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Charlie?
Thank you very much, Roger. Charlie McMahon. I've been in town since 1986. I got involved as a Board of Selectmen member for multiple terms and was also working hard on town issues collaboratively with many, many citizens when we did the waste site, Griffin Park, where the current library and fire station is, and all that came from working together collaboratively to have a mutual consensus on solutions. I brought that attitude to the town, from the town to the State House, and again, providing access and direct input for our fellow citizens when issues they are interested in need to be heard. I've been serving on the Health, Human Services and Elderly Affairs Committee, and I found that to be an extremely challenging but also satisfying environment where you can really help people immediately, and that has been the case for elders dealing with disabilities and food, etc. So I hope to continue in that effort on behalf of the citizens of Windham and the state of New Hampshire, and would appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, so this first question is going to go to Alan. In New Hampshire, the idea of local control has been a keystone. Oh, by the way, this is a 1-minute question. In New Hampshire, the idea of local control has been a keystone of our government, economy, conservation, and lifestyle. With recent laws proposed and others passed, like the establishment of the Housing Appeals Board to review local planning and zoning decisions, the state has increased their involvement in previously local decisions. The question is, how would you address the question of local control?
Yeah, thanks, Roger. So when you think of New Hampshire, I mean, there's very little that says live free or die that screams it louder than having control over your own destiny in your own community. So as a state representative, I think the first responsibility would be really to play defense, because this is not over. You know, the inroads that have been made into our communities and our lifestyle from Concord really are just in the last couple of years. So you can expect that trend to continue, if not accelerate, if we don't push back against it. So first and foremost, play defense against new infringements upon redistributing our local tax dollars, upon changing our zoning and pressing things down upon us. And I think once you establish that beachhead, you can start to try to dismantle some of the infringements that have already been put in place by the recent legislators. Thank you. I'm good, Tom. Good job, though. I saw that right away.
Okay.
Thank you, Alan. Caitlin, the same question to you.
So I support local control. The ultimate aim of government is to protect life, liberty, and property rights. Having limiting government control allows us to be regulated while still preserving our liberty and freedom. Local government should possess the wisdom to implement land use regulations as passed by Windham voters. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Okay, Bob, same question.
Yeah, so I am a firm believer in local control. I think it's crucially important since the context in which this comes up seems to be land use regulation and the HAB. I think it's really important that everyone understand that when we talk about local control, obviously that has to be tempered, but because when we're talking about land use regulation, we're not talking about property that we own as collectively as a town. We're talking about property that some individual owns, private property, and that person's rights have to be respected. To the extent that there's been suggestions about, there's a problem with the HAB, I have to say, honestly, I don't understand the argument because the HAB makes no substantive changes to New Hampshire law. The law is the same before the HAB as it is after the HAB. And so I think that the HAB has bipartisan support in the legislature, and I think it's unlikely that there will be any changes to that, nor should there be.
Thank you, Bob. Katie?
Thank you. So this question really touches on a number of issues, and I do believe that there should be some balance there. But I'd like to just give an example of another type of issue going beyond the examples that have been given that I think is applicable here. For example, I think that there was a bit of an overstep with some of the laws that have been passed both here and in other states, where there are broad and ill-defined prohibitions on certain subjects being taught in schools, which can create a chilling effect on speech that can go beyond the original intent of the law. And rather than placing some trust in the teachers, as well as trusting the communities, to come forward if some particular teacher is crossing a line, we've instead, dictated kind of that from Concord, which I fundamentally disagree with.
Thank you, Katie. Christy?
Yeah, so the office that we're all running for is state representative. And we're supposed to be bringing the voice of our community. It would be bringing the voice of Windham to Concord. So the challenge then is to figure out how you address state level issues with Windham's voice. So for issues that are felt uniquely in different communities across the state, I think there's ways that we can bring about solutions that would be more enabling legislation versus broad mandates, and use incentives and encouragements. And if it's just not the time for that community to jump in and tackle that issue that New Hampshire is facing, then they stay status quo for the time being. So I think housing has been a big issue for Windham in terms of local control being discussed, and the HAB was part of a multi-pronged approach, and they've been dealing with onesies, twosies. And so I think it's time to revisit the HAB and its function.
Thank you. Val? Oh, she's muted, Tom.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. I believe decisions should be made at the lowest level of government possible. But when decisions impact other towns or areas, then you need to look at where the decisions need to be made. For example, decisions involving resources such as water or energy might need to be made at a more regional level or statewide level. A specific example would be that Pelham, for example, should not be able to make a decision about water that would negatively impact Windham's aquifers or water quality, and vice versa. So for me, the default is that the decision is made at the town level. Unless it could negatively impact other towns, then it must be moved up a level. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Charlie?
Thank you, Roger. The issue of local control, I think de facto it's in agreement with all of us that we want to have the ability to make the decisions for our town in our town. What we do have, although, is enabling legislation that has taken place over the decades coming from Concord. And I've found in learning about as being a representative on behalf of Windham is that we first have to learn what does the law allow us to do, and by therefore identifying what can we do and then what can't we do. The specific to the HAB, there are issues at times when interpretations of existing law are a moving target without precedent, and the citizens can be taken advantage of, and they did not have a recourse except through extensive funding being spent. This is one that can give an avenue where issues can be handled quickly and also cost effectively for both the town and the citizenry. So I'm a believer in giving voice to both and getting it done while we're young. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. And Matt?
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to proactively use a chit if necessary. So just let me know if I go over a minute and a half. I believe that you are supposed to represent the people that you elected you. And because of that, I believe that if you are a representative of a community, in this case, Windham, that you should execute the will of the Windham resident. And so the reason I'm saying that is I also believe that if the person who's paying for a thing, they should have the right to decide what that thing is. So for example, I'm going to use education. If the Windham voter and the Windham resident is paying for education, then the Windham voter and Windham residents make the determination of how that money is spent and how the education is enacted. Regarding land use and that, I'm sure we'll talk about that more later. But my issue with that, as far as the state, is that when you're a member of a community, you should have a right to decide how your community operates. And when you're dealing with a government source that's farther and farther out, be it state or federal, you're getting farther and farther away from what the will of the people want. I don't believe that state representatives or federal representatives somehow have greater wisdom than the folks who actually live in the communities that they are in. It's for that reason, I believe that we should institute something called home rule. Home rule would give sovereignty to local communities for certain things, for example, education or land use. And that would eliminate the debate. I'm not going up to be a state rep to try and execute my greater wisdom. I'm trying to go up to Concord to bring that back to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kathy?
Hi, everybody. I'm not on mute, right?
No, you're good. Can hear you.
Okay, sorry, it didn't pull up my face. So just want to thank everyone for being here, and thanks to Roger and Tom for working together with me on this. So my question to everybody, and it's freaking me out that I can't see myself. Hold on, there. Okay, so here's my question. This is going to be a 1-minute answer. In 2021, Governor Sununu signed a budget that included a voucher system known as the Education Freedom Accounts, where families earning up to 300% of the federal poverty line, or $79,500 for family of 4, could use up to $5,200 from the public funds towards private or homeschooling. In 2 years, the program has expanded from the proposed cost of $170,000 to more than $15 million this year. The state legislature has also proposed or passed bills regarding education, including one that addresses any discussion of divisive concepts and another on parental rights. So the question is, and this is a 2-part question, do you believe that the Education Freedom Accounts voucher program is working well, or should it be changed, and how would you change it? And the second part is, do you feel the New Hampshire Department of Education provides direction which allows proper balance between the rights of parents, the rights of students, and the rights of school personnel? So that's to Caitlin first.
Thank you for the question. Kids are diverse and need diverse educational opportunities in order to succeed. Parents know what is best for their children. Sometimes the local public school is best. Sometimes the local public charter school is more appropriate. I support educational choice so that our children get the excellent educational experience they deserve. Financially, the cost per pupil is about $15,500 for public education, versus the average for school choice is much less, with $4,600 we're giving with EFA, or $7,400 we're paying towards the charter school. So yes, I am a supporter of school choice. In terms of the second part of the question, yes, I do believe that the New Hampshire DOE often provides detailed written guidance when an issue arises, and I believe that that guidance helps to provide balance for students. Thank you.
Okay. We're now to Bob.
Hi, thanks very much. So to answer the first part of your question, I am a strong supporter of the Education Freedom Accounts. And I actually think that they should be expanded in terms of the limitations of income. The one area where I do have some concern, and at least would be willing to consider some changes, is if there's going to remain an income limitation on education freedom accounts, then I do think there's been a claim that the Department of Education doesn't check to make sure somebody meets the income limits every year. In other words, if you meet it once, you're golden for the rest of your education career. I think I would change that. If in fact that's happening, I would change that to say, no, you have to do it. You have to meet the whatever the income limitation is. You have to look at that on a yearly basis. And as far as the critical race theory bill, I'll deal with that later since I'm out of time.
Okay, on to Katie. Same
Thank-
question.
Thank you. Yes, to the first part of the question, I am concerned about the program siphoning funds away from our public schools, where the majority of students are still educated, as well as sustainability of the program. But I'm also concerned about equal access to the program for students with disabilities, given that private schools aren't always required to provide the same special ed services as public schools. For example, it's notable that while 15% of public school students receive special ed services, only 6% of students who use this voucher program do. And I think it's important that students not be required to essentially give up the right to an equal education and the services necessary to provide it in order to participate. As for the second part of the question, aside from the things I mentioned earlier, I do think they generally strike a pretty good balance. And as always, I'd be open-minded to any potential issues that constituents bring to my attention.
Okay, thank you. On to Christy, same question. If anyone needs me to reread it, let me know, but you probably all have it written in front of you.
Right. So I have big concerns about the voucher program. It's massively over budget. And the concern that that Bob raised about if once you're approved, you're kind of in for life, I think that would really need to be reconsidered. I look at my situation now with my last child just graduating versus where we were 10 years ago when Rob was out of work and it was the recession and yeah, we would have qualified, and now definitely not. So those funds shouldn't still be, shouldn't have been still helping us, and they don't because our kids are in public school. But so that's one of my big concerns about the program and the funds that it takes away from our public school, which are strong public schools is a foundation for the entire country and the state. And in terms of the divisive concepts, I think the laws that have been passed have been confusing and threatening and potentially limiting speech and a robust education for our kids.
Okay, thanks, Christy. On to Val.
Yeah, as far as the voucher system, unless people can show that it has no negative impact on New Hampshire public education or on our property taxes, then I can't support it. I think, as people have said, the current program, I believe, is fiscally irresponsible. It's over budget. There's no oversight. We've talked about the not having annual applications or means testing, which is a problem. I sent my kids to the Windham Public Schools through 8th grade, and then they went to Phillips Academy Andover, a private school. And I never expected town taxpayers to subsidize me or pay for that. That was my family decision, and that's what we did. I didn't expect a public subsidy for that. As far as the rights issue, I think government laws that try to mandate what is taught and how it's taught rarely, if ever, go well. And so too many people with too many perspectives or agendas should not be involved in educational program. We have a good balance here with the PTA and school board and parents, and I don't think the state should be telling residents and our educational professionals what to do and how to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charlie, to you.
Thank you very much. As one who's been involved dealing with parents who have children of ages from 1 through adults with developmental disabilities, education plays a major role in preparing them for their success going forward. And the earlier that they have access to the appropriate education opportunities, the better. This education fund that we have is giving that opportunity as soon as possible that flat out was not available prior. I've dealt with that personally, but also helping parents get the services that their children, and with, I'm focusing primarily on children that are young, so that they can have an environment of education that can optimize what they can do so that they can be fully prepared by the time they are out of school age. So I've been in full support of the education freedom accounts for that option. And then when we see the performance, when a review is done, that will yet to come on whether we continue it. That is what we have done on previous programs, and we can do it for this as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. On to Matt.
Sure. I'm going to lead off by saying that I believe that since education is funded by local property taxes, that the local taxpayer should make the decision. So if the town of Windham wants to have something like a voucher system and we vote on it as a community, so be it. I would not stand in the way of that. That said, the public town school predates the state, the country, the colony. It's a nearly 500-year-old tradition in New England, and it has served us very well. And I will say this, if there are issues with the public system, then we should figure out how to fix them. If it costs more money, so be it. If we can't afford it, so be it. But to try to divest from that and leave certain folks behind because we're trying to just help a few with these voucher systems is the antithesis of what the Yankee tradition is when it comes to education. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. On to Alan, same question.
And Kathy, can I cash one of my chips going into this if I run over, please?
Yep.
You got that? All right, thank
yep.
you. So, when you think of the education freedom accounts, I can't think of too many things that represent all that's wrong in Concord better than that. First off, as a concept, competition is good. It's healthy. Everyone gets better at what they do. Our schools are no exception to this. However, what our legislature did is they proposed a bill, and because of the money, they couldn't get it passed. So they kept dropping the dollar value to under $200,000. They got it passed, and now we've got a $15 million commitment. We don't print money in Concord. We're not the Fed. That $15 million is coming out of our tax dollars. Make no mistake about it. We are funding this massive budget overrun. Fix the program and develop it in a way that you don't impact the local taxpayer, and maybe you have something. As far as the $5,200 per student versus $15,000 per student, that's just beyond ridiculous. The charter schools, they don't bus their kids, we do. They don't provide sports for their kids or music education, we do, as in the public school system does. We have over 100 paraprofessionals providing one-on-one education for challenged students in our school system. The charter schools don't have to have any. So to say that, oh, look, we're doing this and it's costing us a third of what you're spending in your public schools is just a huge lie to the public. And we should stop talking in those terms. Let's see an apples to apples accounting, and you will see that the money is almost the same. Thank you.
Tom, can I ask a question just so I'm keeping track for myself?
Sure.
Both Matt and Alan used a chit, but did they actually end up using it? Did you count those in or not?
They did. Yep.
Yeah.
That was
Okay.
1
All right.
minute
I'm just
and
keeping
28
track as well.
from Alan. So
Can I actually cash in a chip to answer the second part of her question?
sure.
Yep.
That's good.
You want to reread the second part of the question?
You want me to reread it? I probably should
Yeah,
just
so
for
just the
anyone else.
second part. Yeah.
Okay, so do you feel the New Hampshire Department of Education provides direction which allows proper balance between the rights of parents and the rights of students and the rights of school personnel?
Thank you. So starting off, I do feel that the parents should have every right to be completely involved in their children's education. And if they have certain things they wish their children not to be participating in, they should have the right to do that. With that said, I'm a firm believer in what's called the Socratic method. I think that information, challenging information, controversial information at age appropriate levels provides a child or a teenager with a way to get a better learning of what the world is like. And so, for example, with CRT, I personally don't think that's a very good theory. I've read it, but that doesn't mean I don't think it should be out there to be challenged and either reinforced or ripped apart by the student body. Thank you.
Can I, Tom, can I use a chit?
Roger?
Yes.
Yes.
So, I think that one of this sort of raises what has just been talked about by Alan and Matthew, I think raises a really important point here, is that we talk about local control, but one of the things that the legislature passed the last session, which I supported, was to create a sort of ombudsman for at the state level for parents for children with special needs that have felt that they were not being fairly treated by their school district. And I think that's an example. I'm not singling out Windham by any means. It was happening around the state. And I think this was very important, where the state needed to be involved.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so we ran through our list. It's back to Roger now.
Okay, everybody all set? So this is a 1-minute question. The United States Supreme Court recently decided to overturn Roe v. Wade. In New Hampshire, Governor Sununu signed a 2021 state budget that included a ban on abortion after 24 weeks unless a pregnant person's life or health is at risk or when a fatal fetal anomaly exists. The question is, are you in favor of the New Hampshire law on abortion? And if not, what would you like to see changed? And this one starts with Bob.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yes, as I said last week, my position on abortion is a bit complex. First, I think that the Supreme Court decision overruling Roe was absolutely the right one. And frankly, it's not so much that in particular that it dealt with abortion. It's just that the original Roe versus Wade decision simply made up a constitutional right out of whole cloth. Courts are not supposed to do that, and I'm glad the court set that straight. Having said that, as I've always been pro-choice, but I don't think that means that a woman has a right to have an abortion for any reason or no reason right up until the day before the child is delivered. So I think that what we did here in New Hampshire with the current legislation is it represents a very reasonable approach that I suspect is supported by the vast majority of people around the state. And I think I would not be in favor of changing the law from the way it is now. I think it's very good the way it is right now.
Thank you, Bob. Katie?
Yes, thank you. So I'm generally okay with where the law is right now in New Hampshire, but I do believe that we should do two things. One is to add overt protections for people who are coming here from other states and for people in New Hampshire who help those people so that they are not later penalized by other states who are seeking to enforce their laws in New Hampshire, basically. I also think that we should continue to assess the law because sometimes there are unintended consequences of laws like this that, if doctors are confused about where that line is, for example, on the life of the mother, that they might hesitate, and if they wait too long, that can be too late. So I think we need to make sure that we pay attention to that and ensure that women's lives are not in jeopardy because of that. I also wanted to just add one thing, and I think I'll use it here to expand my time. And because I just wanted to mention that part of the law that exists now is that fatal anomaly exception. And my opponent and I disagree on that. I think that is a very important part of the law. It protects the decisions of people who are going through horrible experiences and shouldn't have the state involved in them. And it also potentially puts the lives of other fetuses in jeopardy because if one is in danger, it can harm the other. And so I just wanted to make it clear that I would protect that right going forward.
Thank you, Katie. Christy?
All right, so I support the current timeframe that we have with the set at 24 weeks. And I supported the amendments that happened this year to include exceptions past 24 weeks for the fatal fetal anomaly. And also the change that drastically reduced the number of patients that would be required to have the invasive ultrasound prior to accessing the procedure. If I was to change the law that as it exists now, it would be to either decrease or perhaps remove the criminal penalty for physicians, because that concern and that thumb on the scale in the physician's mind, I don't think that concern should be there in the exam room as they're having the conversation with the patient that's facing a difficult decision. That's it.
Thanks, Christy. Val? She's muted. Tom?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Again, I've always believed that the government and politicians should not be involved in decisions like this, that it should be the woman, her family, and her doctor. And the law right now opens the door to lowering the number of weeks, removing exceptions, and you can read that dozens of laws are being crafted as we speak to do that in the next legislature. But the law is here, so now what? Well, in reality, abortions done later in term are tragic, and they're always generally done, well, most, for serious medical reasons. For example, as Katie said, needing to abort one twin to save another, the health of the mother and the fetus, and other real medically based reasons. So I believe we need to remove the criminal action against doctors and allow medically advised healthcare to be performed at that time after 24 weeks. The doctor and the woman and her family should be in that room when making those decisions of those medical problems and concerns, and not a government agency or a politician. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Charlie?
I am in support of the bill and of the RSA as it now exists. It did bring and confirmed choice for the woman, but also for to ensure that the woman and also the family would have professional assistance in making the right decision for the health, not just for the child, but for the mother. And believe that the law that we have in place now speaks to that, and we'll hope for the best for all going forward.
Thanks, Charlie. Matt?
Sure. I'm going to say from a personal standpoint, from my personal belief system, I don't believe in abortion. However, that said, I do not believe that the government should be involved in this decision. And I will actually agree with Representative Lynn in his Supreme Court justice capacity that I think he's right that the foundation of Roe v. Wade probably was a little questionable. But that said, I can tell you that from every conversation I've had with women about this, they continually point out how it's not a lightly taken decision. And they keep pointing out, well, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? What if there's this issue medically? And it made me realize politicians should stay completely out of this conversation. This should be a decision between the woman and the doctor and her partner to some extent. But this is not something that the government should have any say in, any involvement in. And I am against any form of intrusion outside of medical reasons. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Alan?
Thank you, Roger. So the 24 weeks is certainly a fair compromise between what the far left and the far right would like to see. So in that sense, it works pretty well. We've heard a lot about the carve-outs for fetal anomalies, for health of the mother. Don't lose sight of the fact that our House passed the original bill without any of those. And only after the citizenry created an uproar did they realize, oh, we better go back and fix this or there's going to be hell to pay. So they did. But frankly, my concern isn't the bill that we have, because again, it's relatively fair. My concern is the one that's coming, the one that's going to hit the House floor in January, maybe early February at the latest, getting much more aggressive against a woman's reproductive rights. We need people in Concord who are not bound by a party platform, who are not influenced by anybody other than their constituency here in Windham as to what is best for our community, best for the women in our community.
Thank you, Alan.
May I use a, whoops, I'm sorry, what happened here? Oh, did I hit something? Sorry. May I use another chit?
You sure can, Bob.
If I could just respond to Alan's point, I know he has made this point a number of times about, how if you're in a party, you're sort of bound to do what the party says. As I pointed out at the Women's Forum debate, myself and another Republican on the Finance Committee were the reason that we have the fatal fetal abnormalities, because we voted with the Democrats because we felt strongly about this. that there shouldn't, that there should be this fatal fetal abnormality. And in fact, once we did that, the other Republicans realized that this was not going to fly without, that the bill was going to pass with that. And so they agreed. And as I said then, nobody suggested to me, threatened me, told me that I was going to, lose my gig on the finance committee or anything like that. So I do think that's just kind of overstated.
Mhm.
Thank you, Bob. Caitlin?
I support the current New Hampshire law. I think that it gives women the freedom and reproductive liberty to make these decisions with their healthcare provider. And I would also like to echo, some of what Bob is saying. I think that any person that's up in office can make their own decisions and do what they want to do. I mean, I think that's shown here tonight by the fact that we have one Republican who is not here and we have 3 that are here. I think each of us can make our own decisions and do what we think is best. And I think it's important, and hopefully that we do take into consideration what the community is asking, the majority of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. If that's it on that question, then I'd pass it back to you, Kathy.
All right, so we are on number 3. So we start with Bob. Okay, so this is a 1-minute question. No, we're not on number 3. Sorry, we're on number 4. Yeah, number 4. I was like, wait, we just talked about that. Okay, so 30-second question. And so we start with Katie then. Sorry about that. The country has become more divisive over the past 6 years. In politics, we often hit a stalemate because, as we see in a 2-party system, our elected officials have often lost the ability to work with one another. So the question is, what are some examples of how you will address this divisiveness working across the aisle? Okay, so that goes to Katie first.
Thank
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a crucial issue. It's absolutely critical that elected officials be willing to work together, especially on issues where we find common ground. And there's often far more common ground than people tend to believe, or at least as is portrayed by a lot of politicians. So I'm far more interested. I'll use another chit here too to extend my time. I'm far more interested in getting things done than I am about worrying about who gets the credit or pleasing special interest groups or anything of that nature. Ultimately, it's our job to represent our constituents, and that will be at the heart of what I do. Compromise might be a dirty word in politics, but it's the only way to get things done. And we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So I will always keep that in mind and work with whoever is willing to work with me to get those things.
Thanks. Okay, on to Christy.
So I would say my plan is to do in Concord the same thing that I've done in Windham. I've served on any number of boards, committees, community events, worked with people from, with all different stripes. And I've shown that I can do that. And I've had working relationships with people that have turned into friendship relationships. And it's that trust and that I try to build and build those alliances so that when the time comes to get things done, and I'm going to use a chit on this one, so that when the time comes to drive a solution, I can reach out to people. For example, today there was an issue there's an issue kind of going on in town, and I picked up the phone and I called the chair of the local GOP party. Now, we respectfully disagreed on a couple of things, but we also came up with a plan going forward. So, that's what I try to do. I reach out, I'm ready to have those discussions and be able to work together to come to solutions.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Christy. And so on to Val.
Thank you. I mean, this idea of divisiveness in politics, obviously, it's deeply rooted. It's hard to fix soon, but it's terrible for our town and our state and our country. I truly believe in a balanced bipartisan approach to solving problems. And to go to Concord, you need to be open-minded. You need to read all bills, not just those sponsored by a party that you particularly align yourself with. You need to have regular structured communications with your outside of Concord. I really believe that the more you talk with people within Windham, and get their thoughts and get out of that party bubble, that it will help with the divisiveness issue.
Okay, Val, thank you. On to Charlie.
I've had a history of working directly with individuals that are affected by state law, both proposed and in play. And the issue of working together, I have a term called cooperative collaboration to achieve consensus. It's having total transparency and bringing the same information to all in time that they can make reasonable and rational review of same and then determine what their recommendations are. I found that to be very successful, and I would continue that effort going forward and on behalf of Windham citizens at the State House, which I have done my whole tenure at the State House. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. On to Matt. Same question.
Sure. Well, since I'm an independent, I don't need to be worrying about which side of the aisle I'm on. I'm going to be in the middle. And I can tell you that I'm not going up to Concord to play as part of the wheel. I'm going up to break the wheel. And I know that that's going to probably mean some disruption in the beginning. But the idea is that if we can, the best thing that could possibly happen to this state would be to eliminate all parties. I know you can't do it because of the First Amendment, but if we had no parties and everyone had to be judged on their own merits, we would probably get a lot done. I'm sure there's a lot of things that I agree with from folks on both sides of the aisle in this particular debate. And I think that an independent would be uniquely able to bridge those gaps.
Great, thanks. Alan, to you.
Thanks, Kathy. Working across the aisle, I am the aisle. That's exactly why I'm running. I'm running as an independent because I'm tired of the divisiveness that separates. And as Christy said in the last Women's Club debate, every bill, write down party lines, 90% accuracy every time based on the party. That's crazy. That can't be good for Windham. I will tell you that if we elect an independent to the State House, we're going to send a very clear message to both parties that we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Alan. On to Caitlin.
So it's very important that we all work together for the best interests of Windham and for our state. I will always work as a team player and not in a manner that allows for divisiveness. I pledge to listen to our community and fight for the best interests of Windham. I think divisiveness is created by refusal to work with people. And I think it's important that we just never allow for that, that we're always open and willing to be a team player. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. And we'll finish up with Bob.
Hi, thanks so much. Well, I think I agree with everyone else here that it's very important to be able to reach across the aisle and work with others. And I think I have a history of doing that, not only as a legislator, but in my time as a legislator, but in my time on the court. As some of you may or may not know, the New Hampshire Supreme Court, we have a record of probably 95%. Maybe that's a little bit high, but certainly 90% of our decisions are unanimous, and that requires bringing a lot of people together. I have worked very fruitfully with a number of Democrats in leadership positions over the last 2 years, and I look forward to doing that in the future.
Great, thank you. If no one has any chits to use, I will pass it over to Roger for question 5.
Okay, thank you. This is another quick one, a 30-second question. New Hampshire has weathered many downturns over the past few decades, better than other parts of the country have. There are always challenges to be faced, however, from workforce shortage, physical infrastructure issues, limited access to childcare, housing costs, wage stagnation, increased heating oil and electricity prices, and an aging population. So the question is, what concerns do you have and what praise would you share around the way the state economy has been managed in recent years? And what do you propose for the future? The first one goes to Christy.
All right, so we'll solve the economy in 30 seconds. All right, so I am proud of New Hampshire's resiliency coming out of this and many other challenges in the past. Our economy is strong, our businesses are innovative. My recommendation or my pursuit would be to hold the line on the tax cuts. The approach has been to cut business taxes to reward businesses, but we have work to be done in the state. Roger just gave a whole big list. And if you ask any 1%er, they'll tell you it takes money to make money. So New Hampshire's economy is small towns and small businesses, and that's how we're going to build a New Hampshire economy.
Thank you, Christy. Val? She's muted. Tom?
I am so sorry.
No, that's okay. No problem.
better than listening to me cough. I'm sorry. I'm very pleased in terms of the economy that we haven't had to put in any income or sales tax. I think that that's special to New Hampshire, and that's part of our identity and advantage. But as the litany of things Roger listed, I'm concerned about the future of our economy, the housing crisis, the energy prices, everything that Roger listed. And I'm concerned that we are lagging behind, and we need to going to need to attract businesses, workers, and young people. And they want strong public schools, housing, and smart climate and energy policies, and we need to provide them.
Thank you, Val. Charlie?
I think from a macroeconomic standpoint in the state of New Hampshire, we do need jobs so people will remain in the state, and also to have reasonable commuting time to those jobs. Therefore, what I see we need to do more of is dealing with our infrastructure management and funding for that. We do have in the upper north part of our state, it's access to basic services is quite a challenge, primarily medical. And in working in that direction, I like to see us do more work at the State House in that regard moving forward. And that brings high-paying jobs and those with the ability to afford to live in our state and to provide quality services as well.
Thank you, Charlie. Matt?
Sure, I'm going to default. I'm not going to talk about energy. I'm going to say that for climate. But that said, it's important to recognize something here. We are currently rated number 4 out of 50 states when it comes to our economy. And we're number 3 out of 50 states when it comes to opportunity. New Hampshire's economy is incredibly strong. New Hampshire's opportunities are incredibly strong. We have a very educated and competent workforce. We have an incredibly vibrant defense sector. We have a very vibrant biotech sector. Just look up at Manchester. I'll use a chip if I need to. So what I'm trying to say here is that I think New Hampshire does not have an economic issue. We are actually one of the strongest states in the union, and New England in general is very strong. Good.
Thanks, Matt. Alan?
Yeah, picking up where Matt left off, we are absolutely one of the best managed states in the union. And as a fiscal conservative, I would work to continue that trend going forward. It's going to take a lot of effort, though, to control the spending. We've gotten lazy these last few years because the Fed has printed trillions of dollars and pushed it out into the states. And we've gotten very used to spending that money. And guess what? It's going away. So we're going to have to buy our own ambulances and fire trucks and breathing gear and everything else. So we're going to have to rein in the spending, and we're going to have to learn to live on our own tax revenue. And what we have to do is hold that line on no income and no sales tax, because that is paramount to our future here in the state.
Thank you, Alan. Caitlin?
I praise the previous New Hampshire legislature under Republican majority for delivering a fiscally conservative budget that cut property taxes by 100 million and sent 2.4 million in relief to Windham. Also reducing business taxes and phasing out the interest and dividends tax, while also increasing the rainy day fund. Given the current economic hardships that many are facing due to inflation, it's important that we remain fiscally conservative. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Bob?
Thank you. Yeah, I think in terms of what's happened sort of up to now, so to speak, I think Governor Sununu and the Republican legislature in the last 2 years has done an excellent job of stewardship in terms of managing our state's finances and providing needed services, but keeping taxes low. I agree with Alan that there is we are in for a real problem when all of this federal spending stops, and we've got to be able to deal with that in a responsible way.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Katie?
Thank you. Yes, I'm concerned about many of the things that you mentioned, Roger, and especially housing costs. I think that has become a real burden for a lot of people. But I think that we've made some strategic errors. Some people have mentioned the federal money and being too reliant on it, but at the same time, I think that not accepting the federal money for COVID vaccinations just put that burden on the state and on New Hampshire taxpayers, rather than having that burden shared with the other states, as other states were able to do.
Thank you, Katie. Kathy, it's over to you.
All right, so I am on question 6 and we start with Val. Just making sure. Okay, so this is a 1-minute question. Much of the business of the general court occurs during the normal workday and the compensation is minimal. So the question, are you able and willing to provide the time required to participate when the general court is in session? So it's on to Val first. Val's on mute.
I'm on it.
I'm really making you work, huh? Well, that's an easy one for me. I mean, I, for many years, brought up 2 children and had long commutes to challenging jobs in high-tech management, and that left little time for other things. But I'm fully retired, which is wonderful, and definitely now have the time to give back to the community that I've lived in and loved for 36 years. I do want to spend the remaining of my time just to make a comment about the property tax question, about the relief that, the quote, relief that was given to Windham and others. For the, we shouldn't be fooled by the fact that it was a one-time amount given, which expires this year, this next year. And we're going to be held with an over $100 million burden that we're going to have to pay for. So I think it's disingenuous to feel that we've been relieved of property taxes by the current legislature. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. On to Charlie.
Thank you. I am pleased to advise that in the 20 years I've been at the State House, I can count on the fingers of the fingers on one hand is how many times I've not attended either sessions or committees. I've also been chair of multiple subcommittees as well, and have been proud to participate every time in advancing issues on behalf of my fellow citizens in Windham and at the state level, so that the voice has always been heard. So I'm prepared to continue that effort and to always be present and to get things done while we're young. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. And we move to Matt.
On this question, I'll just quickly say, yes, I don't know how to do anything but full throttle. I will be attending this and going all in for the duration of however long I'm up there. Going back to the economy, however, I want to follow up with something. I'm thinking back to a client of mine I had in the defense industry in New Hampshire, and how we had long conversations about how he didn't have enough machinists and how he had to pull engineers off the line to work the high-tech equipment because he had jobs that he had to fill. And these were very high-paying jobs, and this was very high. The amount of money we were receiving from that as a state because of the taxes of this company were extreme. And the fact that he couldn't find machinists is really a bigger problem than a lot of the things we're talking about at the state level, which are peripheral. What I'm saying is we really want to focus on making New Hampshire even more competitive than it currently is. We need to figure out how to attract those people here. And those jobs are very high paying jobs. Those jobs where if they think there's an opportunity here, they'll come here. And so I think we should focus on where we want to be when it comes to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. On to Alan for the same question.
Yeah, so early this year, I retired after a 40+ year career in IT and in sales management. My kids are out of the house through college and living on their own. I have nothing but time. And yet during raising those kids and during my career, I managed to spend at least a couple of 100 hours a year volunteering for Windham, again, for the better part of 20+ years. So when you look back at my track record, my attendance, my participation rates in the boards and such, and the volunteer jobs that I served on, I think you can rest assured that I'll be in Concord doing the job, working for you on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And on to Caitlin.
Absolutely. I will strive to have a perfect attendance record. I frequently volunteer in the community, and most that know me know that I'm a very dependable person. Thank you.
Do you want to use your time for anything else? You can add
Nope,
anything
it's
you
okay.
want. Okay. All right. On to Bob.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I like others here, I am retired, and so I have I do a bit of I serve as an arbitrator, but it's very much a part-time occasional duties as an arbitrator. So I have the time on my hands. I think in the last session, I believe I did not miss any sessions of either committees or floor sessions of the legislature, and I would expect to do the same thing in the next session if I'm reelected.
Okay, thank you, Bob. On to Katie.
And yes, I am able and willing to devote that time. My schedule is quite flexible. So I look forward to working to represent my constituents.
Okay, and do you want to use the rest of your time, or are you done? All
No.
set? Okay, on to Christy.
All right, yeah, so I fully anticipate being able to be in Concord for committee hearings and for the votes. I look forward to doing that. I have 2 jobs, but both are very flexible. I control the schedules of both of them, so that should not be an issue at all. And as I mentioned before, my youngest is just getting ready to graduate from high school, so I'm done with the constraints of the childcare duties. So looking forward to being able to commit to this and be able to represent the people of Windham up in Concord.
Okay, thanks, Christy. So if no one else wants to speak, we'll give it back to Roger for a question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is another quick question, a 30-second question. There have been concerns raised about the issue of election processes in New Hampshire and nationwide over the past 6 years. To address and increase voter confidence, the New Hampshire Secretary of State created a special committee on voter confidence and appointed 8 members. The committee has held several public hearings and working session meetings and is working on a final report. The question is, what do you feel is important to address, change, or protect regarding New Hampshire's and Windham's election processes? And this one will start with Charlie.
I just went to a test meeting, for lack of a better word, at the town hall yesterday, or the day before, and our worked with Nikki and her team. They've put together an excellent system, I believe, that is going to meet the challenge of building confidence in our voting method and system when we're utilizing machines to do the voting, but to optimize counting and response for results. So what we're doing locally and using under the codicil of local control, this is happening right now, and the job is being done by our fellow citizens and our experts in town right now.
Thank you, Charlie. It's on to you, Matt.
I'm actually going to follow up on what Charlie just said there. And I can say that when I first signed up to run back in June, I did speak to our town clerk about this very problem and volunteered to get together with the Town Clerk Association and all the other professionals who run the elections to have them draft a bill, because they're the ones that actually would know how to make it run. And I'd be more than happy if by some miracle, Charlie and I are both elected to co-sponsor a bill with him.
Thanks, Matt. Alan?
Thanks, Roger. You know, the first thing we need to do is we need to stop believing in these fake conspiracies and running around and creating new laws and processes to address problems that don't exist. We in Windham, we in New Hampshire have a very long track record and a great history of providing excellent services to our voters and accurate elections. You know, we had a folding machine error that we were told was a conspiracy for 1.5 years. We spent $100,000 in town digging through this to find out it was much ado about nothing. So we do well. We just need to keep doing what we're doing. COVID's over. Let's just reset and move on.
Thank you, Alan. Caitlin?
We need to ensure that elections are accurate and that we're following the laws and procedures that are in place so that residents can have the confidence in our elections. Elections are the foundation of our republic. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Bob?
Yeah, I think, you know, it seems clear, particularly in Windham, that there were some mistakes made in the election of 2020 and perhaps in the primary of 2022, and obviously those need to be corrected. But again, I have to say, I agree with Alan that this one of the things that I think is the most destructive is all of this sort of nonsense that's gone on about conspiracies. That there's, you know, it just seems to me that doesn't help anything. And we need to say very firmly that, you know, stop.
Thanks, Bob. Katie?
Yes, I also agree with Alan. You know, I think the best thing that we can do is tell the truth. When politicians question the results of elections that are free and fair and secure by all, you know, by all measures, because they don't like who won, that puts doubt in the minds of the people at home. And so it's our responsibility as elected officials to be honest with our constituents rather than spreading lies that undermine democracy. It's also crucial that, and I'll, sorry, I'll use another chat. Yeah. Sorry, getting back into my my flow here for a second, but it's
You got it.
yeah, it's also, I think important that voters be able to vote without any intimidation. And I think that creating fear then creates a situation where people feel come out and protect the election, which then can create intimidation. So in addition to that, just to end, is I think that one thing we can all do, and I suspect everyone here would, is to pledge to accept the results of the upcoming election.
Thank you, Katie. Christy?
I could probably use about 24 chits on this one, but I will not. So there's two parts to this, to my answer. One is we have the machines that we have, and what they were shown in the Windham audit to be exceptionally reliable. And so we need to figure out how to continue to adapt to them and make changes to keep our elections being as accurate as possible. One thing that has not happened yet is to have our ballots, and I'm going to use a chit, Tom, too, is to have our ballots set up so that there is a blank area for folds. Already this year, our absentee ballots have Matt, I think, right by the fold. So, we need that would be a no-cost solution to a problem that has already been identified and caused a huge issue in the state. So that was one thing that I advocated for up in Concord already. The other part of my answer is we have the old machines and we need to replace them. So we need to be supportive in the legislature of that process and be aware, keeping tabs with the Ballot Law Commission on their choice of machines, and make sure the state has the money and the willpower to spend it to get the machines we need.
Thank you, Christy. Val? Muted, Tom?
I'm checking now. Should be all set.
I think I'm fine. Thank you. I agree with my previous my colleagues here. I think we have paper ballots which work well. We have machines that count paper ballots that aren't connected to the internet. I think we should stay with that. When audits are seen as needed, they're done well. We have qualified and dedicated public servants in Windham. One thing we may want to consider and look at is maybe having a system where there are random audits of a fixed number of towns and cities per elections, and the towns wouldn't know that they were selected until after the election. And maybe that would add public confidence, but I agree, we just got to get rid of the conspiracy theorists. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Okay, it's over to you, Kathy.
Okay, so we are on question number 8. So this is a 1-minute question. In New Hampshire, the changing climate affects wildlife and natural environments, threatens increased flooding and the health of the ski industry, maple syrup production, and fall foliage tourism. Question is, what do we need to do now to reduce the effects of climate change, and how will you work to see that happen? So that's question number 8, and it's to Matt.
Can I ask quickly how many chits I have?
I have you down as 2. You have 1 left.
Okay. I will say, first off, I am an expert in the energy industry, both macro and micro. And the reason I'm leading off with that when it comes to climate change is I should tell you that we are very capable of reducing our overall energy costs, both for residents, for business, at the same time, dramatically reducing the negative effects of climate, carbon, et cetera. I don't have time to really get into the details, but I will say this, that it's very doable. It's proven technology. I'm a pragmatist when it comes to how energy works. I know there are going to be parts of the solution that the Republicans are going to hate, and there are parts that the Democrats are going to hate. But if we take a pragmatic solution to energy, we can very effectively solve both problems simultaneously. And I apologize for being not more specific, but I would need about an hour to get this thing out. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. On to Alan.
Thank you. So first and foremost, climate change is real and it's here. And we need to stop thinking and talking about, is it real? It doesn't matter if it's man-made or a natural cycle. It's impacting us every day. We need to deal with it. But we need to stop thinking about it as a political football and start thinking about it as a moral responsibility to ourselves and our legacy and our children. I suggest that instead of approaching climate change and addressing it as being a drag on our economy, We need to start thinking about it as a driver of our economy. Elon Musk has made himself the wealthiest man in the world doing exactly that. I would think New Hampshire could get a pretty good slice of that if we addressed it. We need to start thinking about being proactive around renewables, around protecting water resources, quantity and quality, about deforestation and slowing it down and replacing it. These are all things we can do. They're not going to cripple our economy. They're not going to move us off fossil fuels in the next decade. That's insane. It's not going to happen. But we can certainly put a dent in it and help secure our children's future.
Okay, thanks, Alan. On to Caitlin.
This is a topic that I've only heard from 2 constituents in town on, and I'd like to hear more to understand how the majority of our community feels and to weigh their potential suggested solutions. The solution that was presented to me was a carbon tax, which would tax fossil fuels such as oil and gas. And with many struggling with energy costs right now, increasing prices would have a really negative impact on families who are already struggling and having to choose between eating and heating. So I'd like to hear how better we can support having a competition of, producing clean and renewable energy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin. On to Bob.
Thanks. So I certainly agree that climate change is real, and it seems to me like it at least in part it's the result of human activity, and I think I have no doubt that we need to address it. The thing that kind of concerns me is I don't think that while we absolutely need to address it, and we need to start doing it now more aggressively than we have in the past, I don't think that we can do it at the expense of sort of wrecking the economy. And I'm concerned that some of the proposals that have been suggested from time to time by both sides really would have that effect. For example, I give one example of something that I think maybe makes the point. Well, I'm not going to have time to do it, and I don't want to use the shit now, so I'll talk about it later. But thank you.
Okay, Bob, thanks. To Katie.
Hey, Kathy. This is one of the biggest issues facing our world today, and it's only going to get worse for our children and our grandchildren. So it's very important that we start dealing with it now. As a state, we can continue to work on reducing emissions and expanding renewable energy sources. We can also consider things like investing in the infrastructure for electric vehicles to make those a more feasible option for people. Another thing is we could add incentives that would help people to install solar panels which would not only help with this issue, but also potentially the issue of energy costs, which are skyrocketing right now. These are all policies, and some of the others that have been mentioned tonight, they can help address this problem, and we really can't afford to ignore this problem.
Thanks, Katie. On to Christy.
All right, so we've had some conversations tonight about local control. So I think one thing that our cities and towns need is the ability, if they want to have a municipal solar power plant or hydro storage or however they want to do it, and be able to create that excess energy, that there shouldn't be limitations on how much they produce. And they should be able to then turn those savings over to their residents. So climate change is real. We need to respond to it. And I think we can do it smartly as a state. I love the idea of tapping into the innovation that we have here in New Hampshire and be able to reward those and incentivize those companies that want to try to bring those solutions forward. And because we do have such a climate reliant set of industries with our tourism as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Christy. Val, to you.
You don't have to unmute me. Thank you. It's interesting because our colleagues and reps in the state, all expressed that they're really concerned about climate change and that it's real. And what I don't understand is that the New Hampshire GOP over the last 2 years has consistently tabled or vetoed any bills related to containing investments in renewable energy or incentives to energy saving practices, even wouldn't vote to even make a plan to address climate change. I just don't understand that. And because of that, we're the worst state in New England. with the highest energy prices. The science is there. We all agree on that. We just need to do something. So what I would do if I was honored to be a rep is I'd bring all of these tabled and vetoed bills over the past 2 years back to the floor for discussion and hope they at least just get heard and people go on the record. I develop a climate change plan. I'd be part of the regional greenhouse gas initiative, and I would develop policies and incentives for buildings and residents to be energy efficient. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Charlie, to you.
Thank you very much. I have found when there is a issue or an event that affects all citizens and that a collective solution needs to be identified, then the different factions need to be brought together to come with a workable solution. And that means a study committee at the State House level dealing with the different factions to come with recommendations is what I would be recommending, and there have been similar issues like that in the past to have handled. The one other wild card on this is that we don't operate unilaterally. This is also our neighboring states would need to be part of this, because again, we could be a dog ourselves and everyone around us could be a cat, and that could truly hurt whatever resolution we would make. And a big part of that I recall way back was our water quality protection, where we would be targeting very clean water where our neighbors next door were not, and then defeating the purpose of the investment. So it's working collaboratively again to achieve consensus. That's what I would be advocating upcoming. Thank you.
Matt,
Matt.
Tom, I'm
I'd
gonna
like to
check
use a
with you.
chat, yeah, if I can.
Okay.
Was I at the end? I was waiting until everyone
Yes.
spoke. All right.
Yes.
I'm probably gonna go over Tom, but I'll try to be brief. So look, here's the deal. We have a macro issue, which is what's called utility scale generation. The way to have zero emissions and reliable, cheap macro scale generation is nuclear. Gen 2 nuclear plants, which we don't have here. Seabrooks are Gen 1. Gen 2s are incredibly efficient, and they don't need to be near seawater, so we can put them in areas that aren't right next to our tourist areas. So that would be a good base load. There is a ton of potential energy, for example, wind energy up in the White Mountains. Has the most wind potential of anywhere on the East Coast, has to do with Mount Washington and the weather patterns up there. The other end of it, the extreme other end of the scale, is distributed energy. Now, what this means is that the more power that you can have generated from the actual user, the less demand you're going to have on the grid. And when you have lower demand, you pay far less money during peak times. So for example, if we could get distributed models in place during peak times in the summer, we would dramatically lower the cost of our energy. And finally, we need to break the back of the utility lobbyists, because they have dominated our policy not to make things better, not to make things cheaper, not to quote unquote not wreck the economy, but to increase their profits by massive scales. And I'll speak when I have more time on it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Back to Roger for question number 9.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so this is a 30-second one, and we're going to start with Alan. For most Americans, issues of equality have long been a major part of their experience. This topic may include racial, religious, gender identity concerns, and every American's equal right to access healthcare, education, opportunities, safety, personal freedoms, housing, equal pay, fair treatment under the law, and public spaces. The question is, what topics do you feel are important when we speak about equality, and how would you begin to address them at a state level?
So, Roger and everyone, there's really only one topic here. And the answer to it is quite simple. We are all God's children. The Constitution offers protection to all of our citizens. It doesn't differentiate. It doesn't discriminate. The biggest role, I believe, if I go to Concord, is to A, play defense against the extremists who want to introduce legislation that impacts, candidly, small groups of people who aren't like them. I'm up there to represent all residents of Windham, regardless of any of their personal qualities, and I will work very actively to do that.
Alan can have my time.
Thank you, Alan. Caitlin?
Article 1 of our state constitution calls for equality, and it's important that our legislation always reflects this. At a state level, we can work to be more inclusive by directly soliciting the opinions of the various demographics and listening to their ideas, so that we not only have equality, but we have equity. One example of this is that every child should have the joy of playing on the playground. I was saddened to learn that although the playgrounds at Griffin Park and GBS meet ADA guidelines, they are not accessible for some children. Had we had more clear guidance on this, we could have used solid surfacing when originally building instead of loose fill, which is now costly to fix. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Bob?
Yeah, I think obviously equality is a very important issue. I think at the outset, one of the things that we need to make very clear is that we are not a systemically racist society. Does that mean that there is no racism or anti-Semitism or anything like that? Of course not. There are such things, and they are very, very concerning. I was very happy to be a proud, strong supporter of the Holocaust education bill, which was actually passed before I became a legislator, but I testified in favor of it. My wife is actually on the Genocide Education Holocaust Commission, and I think it's very important that that meritocracy be the basis on which decisions are made. Thank you. I'm sorry I went over.
Thanks, Bob. Katie?
Thank you. Yeah, I also believe, of course, that all human beings have equal value, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, age, all of these things, and more. And I agree with the candidates who've spoken before me as well, that the state does have a role in ensuring that people are treated fairly, and that we should be considering all of these groups whenever we vote on a bill. One bill that was up for, actually, I'm not sure I'll have time to discuss the bill in depth, so I'll cut myself off there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Christy?
Right, so I think as one role as state legislators is to lead by example, and that would be to make sure that we're not only listening, but also actively seeking out members of communities that are not actively represented, so that that their input is heard. A lot of times, if you are the only one statistically in the room, then you might not be willing to speak up and be heard. So that question needs to be asked. We need to be looking out for those who aren't speaking up and therefore don't have a voice, because we need to have everybody active and engaged in our state and in our economy. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Val?
I could say ditto, 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 I guess, but I mean, it's important to have laws that protect human rights of minorities, women, LGBTQ plus communities, disabled, the whole gamut, because the state works better when the residents feel safe and can maximize their abilities. I know there have been, and maybe Katie was referring to this, I don't want to speak for her, but the law recently about making it mandatory that if a trusted adult in the school system, if a child goes to that trusted adult and has concerns about their sexual orientation, that they have to legally tell the parent. I think that's a concern. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Charlie?
As one, I joined with all our colleagues here tonight, is that I believe in equal access, equal respect, and fairness for all. We do have laws to that, but it's also in the intrinsic methodology of how you are brought up. And I am one that have worked together with across all different methods and styles and attitudes, with the goal of working together to have a fantastic result for all in our state, and also to set an example for our country. I will continue that, and I believe all our colleagues will do the same.
Thanks, Charlie. Matt?
Sure. It's funny, I might have a more nuanced answer to this, but I guess I will say that personally, I believe that a diversity of thought is the greatest thing you could have in a society, because that'll allow you to build the best society possible. You take the best and you set aside the worst. And so what I really believe, and actually interestingly, Caitlin said this, was I really believe in equity, or I should say that, to give an example, if there's a tree full of apples, you want to give each person a ladder so they have an equal shot at getting those apples. And that will allow meritocracy to succeed. And so recognizing that we don't necessarily have an equal, equitable level yet, I think we need to figure out how to get to that so that we can then become a meritocracy.
Thanks, Matt. If nobody has any chits, then it's over to you, Kathy.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we are on number 10, starting with Caitlin. Let's see. Okay, so this is a 30-second question. The American healthcare system is complex with costs rising and uneven coverage across the country. In New Hampshire, healthcare is a major concern for many, from seniors living on a limited budget to parents with children to those with a debilitating condition. So the question is, what can the state do to best address healthcare concerns in New Hampshire? So starting with Caitlin.
This is a topic that I haven't directly heard from constituents in town on. I've mostly heard about inflation from them. I think that's the number one thing. And so I'd want to hear about their struggles and work together to find some solutions. I know on a high level that we have limited healthcare choices, especially with finding specialist care outside of a hospital entity, and regulations make it really difficult for new practices and facilities to open. I would be in favor of legislation to provide families with more choice when it comes to their healthcare. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. On to Bob.
I have to say, largely sort of mirror what Caitlin said. I have not heard sort of a lot of complaints from constituents or even other legislators about this, but that's not I don't profess in any way to be an expert on healthcare. I do have a sense, though, as Caitlin said, that our regulatory framework tends to make things too complex. And I would be in favor of trying to reduce the complexity of the regulatory framework for healthcare. And I would obviously be willing to listen to input from people who have more expertise in this area than I do.
Okay, thanks, Bob. To Katie now.
Thank you. Yes, I'd also like to say I'm not exactly an expert on what we can do on the state level for this issue. So I would also be interested in learning from others. It is something that I find very important. I've done work in the past, including in my college days. I started a group to advocate for students with disabilities. So I'm very invested in healthcare, not only for people with disabilities, but everyone. Everyone deserves access to affordable and quality healthcare. And so I would do what I could to make that a reality. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Katie. Christy, to you.
All right, so I've been 30 years in the healthcare field, and so I have seen a lot, and I've treated a lot of patients. I've treated a lot of patients from Windham. One thing I'm going to be following is the governor got a paid family medical leave bill passed, and that is going to be open to enrollment in January. And participants would be eligible sometime in the summer to be able to start accessing that. I think that that's a very important resource for residents of Windham and residents of New Hampshire to be able to help care for their family members or themselves during health crises. Also, we need to make sure that we maintain affordable access and available access with enough, especially mental health care practitioners. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Val?
Yes, I think the idea of offering quality healthcare services to all areas of the state. We're fortunate that we're near, Boston, and we're on the southern part of New Hampshire, but there are rural areas up in the north that don't have as good access to healthcare services. I think we have to pay attention to that. I think we have to provide a strong marketplace of affordable healthcare insurance options every year to review. And I think we need more support for mental health services, especially with the high level of opiate addiction and people recovering from the pandemic. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Val. Charlie, it's you. Sorry.
Thank you very much. In 2015, I was one of the team that brought upon a new service to New Hampshire called Medical Cost Transparency, which exists today through Health and Human Services, where people can, using their insurance or if not insured, can see what's the most cost-effective source for medical procedures, therapies, etc. Based on that, what we still have in our state being quite broad is access to facilities, and we need to provide more incentives for that, but and to have more insurance choices, and that's a continuing effort that continues today.
Thank you, Charlie. To Matt now. Same question.
Sure, two-part answer. First, talking about how we pay for it, i.e. health insurance and those methods. The health insurance model is a complete unmitigated disaster. The fact that we don't know what how something costs from one hospital to another, complete unmitigated disaster. We need to have full transparency, and we need to fund this in whatever way is the best, most pragmatic. That said, part two, when it comes to development of things like new drugs, new biotech, new procedures, we are the best in the world. And then market-based profit motive has allowed us to be innovative like that. So we need to break these two things apart. We need to continue to allow the developers of new technologies to be able to profit from it and be innovative and be market-based, but we need to restructure our entire insurance model. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And to Alan now.
And Tom, I will probably go over and need one of my chits here. I think I have 2 left. So,
Yes.
Politically, our habit is that we let something bad happen until it augments to the point where it becomes a crisis, and then we react. And certainly our approach to healthcare is no different. One of the cheapest things we can do regarding healthcare is preventative medicine. Simple things. I know they sound maybe a little too simple, but annual blood tests, screening for diabetes could let you talk to somebody who's approaching pre-diabetic status and correct it before they spend the rest of their lives on insulin. Dental cleanings, the number of health issues that arise as you age because of poor dental care is staggering, and the cost to our society and to the workforce is incredible. 2 cleanings a year cost $100. A night in a hospital costs $3,000 to $5,000. Never mind the quality of life. These are very low cost items that we could roll into a health plan that would save our constituents massive amounts of time, effort, and not to mention the discomfort. And no, I am never in favor of a single payer national healthcare system. Go to Medicare for a year and then tell me what you think about the government running your healthcare. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alan. And back to Roger.
Okay, so this is the final question we have scripted, at least. And this is a 1 minute. And there are so many topics which we have not covered in these questions or only touched upon, such as the legalization of marijuana, increased fentanyl deaths, special needs community and income tax, workforce housing, and more. So this is your opportunity to take this time to address 1 or 2 issues that you feel especially need attention. What will your focus be when you get to Concord? And are there bills you would plan to introduce? And I believe we start with Bob, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure, thank you. So I think the most important thing that, in my view, is maintaining the fiscal responsibility of the state, making sure, and my top priority would be to make sure that we do not grow government. That is because there are always pressure to do that respectfully, particularly from the other side of the aisle. And I think that we need to resist that pressure to grow government. For there's this little problem. We can just spend a little bit of money. It'll save us so much. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And frankly, I just you have my commitment that I will be very skeptical about anything that proposes to grow government. Secondly, this is probably particular to me, I think bail reform is a really, really important topic. We almost got it done last year. It didn't happen because our opponents on the other side of the aisle, combined with some extreme right-wing libertarians in our own party, and we weren't able to get it done. I hope that we'll be able to do it this time.
You have a chit left if you'd like to further expand, or you're good?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Katie?
Thank you. Yeah, I want to talk about an issue that we haven't discussed yet. I was 10 years old when Columbine happened. And earlier this year when Uvalde happened, I couldn't help but think while I was watching police officers wait outside the door, then in a way, we've kind of been doing the same thing. For 23 years, we've been waiting for the violence to stop while our kids are asking for help. Gun violence has now become one of the leading causes of death for kids. What simultaneously makes me hopeful and is incredibly frustrating is that the vast majority of us actually agree across the political spectrum on some policies that can help reduce that level of gun violence without interfering with the right to bear arms. And these include universal background checks and as well as extreme risk protection orders with a court overview. I think we can and should come together to enact these policies together. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Christie?
So I'm going to kind of tag on to Katie's there because I want to talk about a different issue in relation to rational gun regulations. And that would be in the United States, we had the second highest total of gun deaths in the world, but 63% of those gun deaths in 2019 were suicide. And the total number of deaths was 40,000. So I think if we can come together as a country, but we can lead by example here in New Hampshire, if we can work on our mental health system, and if we can tackle and combat our mental health issues, we need more practitioners, we need access, we need affordable access, and also practitioners available to combat the suicide problem. That I think in return, we would also be decreasing our gun deaths and be able to show the true responsible gun owners that we do have in the state and in the US. Thank you.
Thanks, Christie. Val? She's muted, Tom.
Thank you. Yeah, the gun safety issue is, I do believe that we can do common sense gun safety and still respect, as I do, and all of us, I'm sure here, do respect the Second Amendment rights. Another issue that we haven't spoken about, which is of interest to me, is campaign finance. I think that there's too much money in politics. It's been going on for too long. And it gets worse. It doesn't get better. In the last legislature, and when I filed to become a candidate again, I was surprised to learn that the amount I could accept from an individual had risen, and the amount that you can accept from a PAC is unlimited. And that was HB 263 that our representatives voted for. And I just feel that that's going in the wrong direction. So I'd like to look at campaign finance as one of the many issues that we need to address. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. Charlie?
On a number of issues relative to my experience on Health and Human Services, one is mental health resources and also mental health beds to help individuals that need help immediately and not in a wait mode. So we've made some moves on that this year, and that needs more work in that regard. In addition, a bill that was passed a number of years ago was allowing accessory apartments to take place in private homes. And this was where more and more people were taking home with them, families, mom and dad, to take care of them. And that also begat a commitment to the growth of home and community-based care to keep individuals, our fellow citizens, out of nursing homes and the isolation therefrom. I've found that that's something I'm committed to on, and also saving dollars as citizens throughout the state, but also providing a fantastic service to enhance the lifestyle and the lifespan of those who live in our state. So that's a couple of issues that I would be focusing on again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charlie. Matt?
Sure. Well, it probably should be obvious. My number one issue is I want to try and bring an independent attitude to the legislature in New Hampshire. I want to figure out how to break the two-party system. I want to figure out how to have representatives from all ilks look at issues individually, and maybe we can get some better decisions. The second thing is my church, my absolute is I believe in the ability of an individual to make intelligent decisions and be responsible for what they do, i.e. freedom. And so whether it's abortion or guns or anything else, I believe that the individual has the common sense to make reasonable choices and decisions. And so I will try and resist any kind of moral legislation from any direction, and let the New Hampshire tradition of responsibility and accountability rule. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Alan?
Thank you. And Tom, I believe I have one more chit left.
Yes.
And I will probably use it here. The issue that I would highlight, I call the flight of our youth. New Hampshire is one of the, excuse me, is one of the oldest states in the union today. I believe we're number 8, but it's not because old people are moving here. It's because our young people get out of high school, they go to college out of state, and they never come back. And why don't they come back? Well, Certainly, housing is one issue, right? High-paying jobs is another issue. And even something as seemingly insignificant as amenities is a huge issue. When you look at the small markets like a Boulder, Colorado, and we could list 20 or 30 of them that have really attracted the Gen Zs and Xs to settle down, it's because they've invested in infrastructure that those individuals enjoy. In case in point, we're trying to get a tunnel underneath exit 4A for the Derry Windham Rail Trail to keep going north. And you'd think we were asking for a new football stadium. We can't get it through DOT, and it's the most insignificant little investment. And by denying it, we're telling the youth, go, we don't want you. We have housing challenges, but so far we're using sticks. Don't beat the communities with sticks into building workforce housing. Incent them with carrots. Make them a deal they can't refuse to build the housing that if you want to legislate this from Concord, then make it a positive for them. Make it something that draws them to it, not beats them into submission. And if I'm in Concord, that's exactly what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to partner with the communities, lead them into the paths that we want to help them get to, and help make our state someplace that our youth want to educate here, invest in higher education, and then stay to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Caitlin?
The issue that is most important right now is inflation and making sure that we stay fiscally conservative. It has truly been heartbreaking to hear from the families who are struggling so much that they have to choose between eating and heating. It's a predicament that no family should ever have to be in. I'll work to support legislation that keeps energy prices down so that it's affordable for our residents. Another important issue is this academic struggles that our children are facing in schools. 1 in 3 New Hampshire students can't read at grade level. 750 of these are Windham students. Our kids deserve better, and it doesn't have to cost more. We can support our hardworking teachers to help students by proactively screening for learning difficulties at an early age. Catching it earlier is cheaper to fix as well. I will work tirelessly to prioritize academic excellence for our kids. Windham families deserve a fresh voice who will listen to our community and fight to do what is necessary for them. Together, I know that we can achieve so much for our community and for the future of our children. I hope to earn the honor of your vote next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. And thank you to all the candidates. I was very impressed with everybody. And I also want to thank Kathy and Tom. And I don't know, Kathy and Tom, if you'd like to add in anything.
And Roger.
I just wish I could have, I just wanted to have a couple of chits in there every once in a while, but next time. Thank you, everybody. This was great. It was really very respectful and informative, and I took lots of notes about everybody, and this was really a great format, I think. This worked very well. Thanks a lot, Tom. Thanks, Roger.
Tom, we want to hear from you.
Oh, I don't hear that very often, Roger. This is novel to me. Thank you everyone for coming, especially to the candidates. I know that for what the position pays, it's absolutely not worth all this trouble. So anyone who is willing to represent our community in any way has, a tremendous amount of respect, whether we agree on issues or not. We're absolutely neighbors. So thank you all for making the time, for coming out. This was a challenging format, right? I mean, 30 seconds goes a lot faster than you think it does when you're talking. So I'm sure everyone felt that a little bit. So thank you guys so much for that. And Catherine, thank you for not restraining, I'm sure, all the notes you wanted to say. And Roger.
No, I wasn't writing my own notes. I was writing, just trying to remember what everybody said.
And Roger, definitely thank you to I think you're like father of the town at this point, but I appreciate you learning how to use a webcam.
Yeah. I'll get the lighting right one of these days.
You look great. You look great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Have a great night.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great
Thanks,
night.
everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
You're gonna have
All right.